The night it all began, the rain came down hard over Nairobi, thick, angry drops slapping against the windshield as I tried to see through the blur. The mansion gates of the Mwangi estate glimmered in the downpour, lights slicing through mist like angry eyes. I had been working for Mr. Mwangi, Kenya's steel magnate and one of Nairobi's wealthiest men, for nearly 8 years. I'd seen business partners come and go, ministers whispering promises, women crying for attention, but nothing prepared me for the girl at the gate that night. I was behind the wheel of the Range Rover, waiting for Mr. Mwangi to come out of the house after a late meeting, when I saw her through the wipers, a thin girl, barefoot, soaked, clutching something under her ragged shawl. At first, I thought she was one of the street children who often came to beg near the estate. But then she did something that froze me. She knelt right there in the rain and raised her hands toward the gate. Her voice, faint yet trembling, cut through the storm. "Please, let me see her. Let me help her." The security guards, 2 tall men with rifles slung carelessly over their shoulders, laughed and pointed. "Go away, witch," one shouted. "You want to bring your bad luck here? Disappear before I call the dogs." But she didn't move. She pressed her forehead to the wet ground. "Please," she cried again. "I can help her. I can save your madam's daughter." I frowned. Everyone in the city knew about little Tasha Mwangi, the billionaire's only child. 9 years old, struck by a strange illness doctors couldn't explain. Rumor had it she hadn't spoken or walked in weeks. Some said she was cursed, others whispered she was dying. But how did this homeless girl know that? When Mr. Mwangi finally emerged, he was in his usual crisp suit, tie loosened just a little. His face looked tired, carved with that silent pain only a father could carry. "Let's go, David," he said, his deep voice flat. But before I could move, one of the guards came running toward the car. "Sir, there's a girl at the gate causing trouble. Says she can heal the child." Mr. Mwangi froze. I could see his jaw tighten. "Another one," he muttered. "Another desperate fraud." The guard nodded eagerly. "Should we chase her away, sir?" Mr. Mwangi sighed. "No, bring her. Let me see this miracle worker myself." The guard's expression flickered. He wasn't expecting that. But he obeyed. They dragged the girl forward, rain dripping from her hair, mud staining her torn dress. She looked no older than 20. Her eyes, dark, steady, seemed too calm for her condition. When she stood before the billionaire, she didn't tremble. She just looked at him and said softly, "Your daughter doesn't need another doctor. She needs forgiveness." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the rain seemed to pause. Mr. Mwangi's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" The girl lowered her gaze. "Forgiveness. She carries pain that doesn't belong to her. If you'll let me in, I can help." The guard started laughing again. "Witchcraft. This is witchcraft talk." But something, I still can't explain it, made Mr. Mwangi raise a hand. "Wait." He looked at the girl again, his voice low. "Who sent you?" "No one," she said. "I saw her in a dream. A child crying inside a golden cage. I followed the dream here. I felt my skin crawl." Mr. Mwangi, a man of reason, didn't believe in dreams. He believed in logic, in power, in the things he could touch. Yet his expression faltered for just a moment. Then he chuckled bitterly. "Dreams? My daughter needs medicine, not fairy tales." "Guards." But before he could finish, the girl swayed. Her knees buckled and she collapsed into the mud. "Sir." I jumped out of the car and ran to her. She was burning up, trembling violently. "Get her out of here," one of the guards barked. "Wait," I said. "She's just fainted." Mr. Mwangi watched silently, his face unreadable. The rain washed over the girl's face, streaking through the dirt. Her lips moved faintly. "Forgive her, please." I looked up at Mr. Mwangi. "Sir, maybe we should let her stay until the rain stops." He hesitated, something he rarely did. Then he sighed. "Fine. Take her to the servant quarters. Tomorrow morning, send her away." And that was how she entered our lives, the girl accused of witchcraft. The next morning she woke before dawn. I found her sitting on the small bench outside the quarters, staring at the sunrise through the acacia trees. "You're awake," I said quietly. She smiled faintly. "The rain has passed." I nodded. "You gave everyone a scare last night." "Did I?" she asked softly. "I only wanted to help." "You picked a strange way to do it, walking into a billionaire's gate during a storm." She turned to me, eyes calm. "Sometimes storms lead us to the right doors." I didn't know what to say to that. When the household woke, word spread quickly. The witch girl from the gate had been taken in. The housemaids whispered, the cooks crossed themselves, even the gardener avoided her path. By noon, Mr. Mwangi's wife, Madame Ruth, returned from the hospital where Tasha was being treated. A proud woman, her eyes always sharp with suspicion. When she saw the girl, she froze. "David," she said sharply, "why is this stranger in my compound?" "Mr. Mwangi allowed her to stay the night," I replied carefully. "Then he's lost his mind. Throw her out. These people bring curses." The girl bowed slightly. "Madam, I mean no harm. You know my daughter's name, don't you?" Ruth's voice rose. "You come here pretending you can heal her. You think we are fools?" "I know her because I saw her," the girl said gently. "In pain. Alone. She was calling your name." Ruth's face drained of color. "How dare you," she whispered. "How dare you speak of my child like that?" She raised her hand as if to strike, but stopped halfway. For a long second she just stared into the girl's eyes, something flickering, fear maybe. Then she turned and stormed into the house. That evening Mr. Mwangi called me into his study. He was sitting by the window, nursing a glass of whiskey. The city lights glittered beyond the compound wall. "David," he said quietly, "what do you think of her?" I hesitated. "She seems different, sir. Not mad. Not dangerous either." He sighed. "Ruth wants her gone. But something tells me," he trailed off, rubbing his temple. "My daughter cried last night. First time in weeks. The doctor said she's not supposed to move. But Ruth swears she saw her reaching out, as if toward someone invisible." My heart thudded. "You think it's connected?" I asked. He chuckled bitterly. "I don't know what to think anymore. My daughter is dying, David. If this girl can help her, in any way, maybe I owe it to try." The next morning Mr. Mwangi asked to see her. She stood before him, quiet but unafraid. "You say you can heal my daughter," he said. "If you're lying, you'll regret ever stepping through my gate." "I don't heal," she said softly. "God does. But sometimes he uses the forgotten ones." Her voice was steady. Something about it, the confidence, the peace, filled the room. "What's your name?" I asked. "Amani," she replied. "It means peace." "Peace?" Mr. Mwangi repeated, almost to himself. "Very well. You'll see Tasha this afternoon." When the girl entered the child's room later that day, the entire household gathered outside. Even I stood by the door, heart pounding. Tasha lay on the bed, frail, tubes running from her arms. Her little chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Amani walked slowly to her side and knelt. She placed her hands near the child's face, not touching, just hovering. "She's afraid," Amani whispered. "There's anger here, not hers. It sits in the house, heavy like smoke." Mr. Mwangi frowned. "What are you talking about?" "She feels her mother's guilt," Amani said quietly. "The child took what her mother could not bear." Madame Ruth gasped. "Enough. This is madness." But before she could move forward, Tasha stirred. Her eyes, closed for days, flickered open. "Mama," she whispered weakly. The entire room froze. Ruth rushed forward, tears streaming. "Tasha. My baby." Amani closed her eyes and stepped back, silent. The child's small fingers reached out, not toward her mother but toward the girl in rags. Then in a trembling voice she said, "The light, it's coming back." I will never forget that moment. The house that had been filled with sorrow for months seemed to breathe again. Mr. Mwangi stood there, unable to speak. Ruth fell to her knees, sobbing. And Amani, the girl accused of witchcraft, simply smiled and whispered, "It's just the beginning." But none of us knew then that her arrival would not only heal the child, it would uncover secrets buried deep in that family, secrets powerful enough to destroy everything. The next few days after Amani's visit to the sick room felt like a dream, one of those soft, uncertain dreams that leave you unsure whether to rejoice or be afraid. Tasha had opened her eyes for the first time in weeks. She was still weak, her voice no louder than a whisper, but she was awake. And for the Mwangis that was nothing short of a miracle. Doctors came and went, scratching their heads, claiming spontaneous neural activity, and unexpected response to medication. But even they couldn't hide their amazement. Every night after that, Amani would sit quietly by the girl's bedside. No chants, no strange rituals, only soft humming and gentle prayers under her breath. Sometimes she would tell Tasha stories from the streets, about children who built castles from broken boxes and mothers who cooked hope out of nothing. The child would listen, her thin lips twitching into a faint smile. And I, David, the driver who had seen all sorts of things in this house, I began to believe something beyond science was happening. But not everyone shared my wonder. Ruth Mwangi couldn't sleep. She prowled the halls at night like a restless spirit, her silk robe swishing softly as she peeked into her daughter's room. Every time she saw Amani sitting there, calm and unbothered, her face twisted with resentment. "She's bewitching the child," she whispered one night as I helped her carry tea to her husband's study. "Can't you see, David? She's manipulating us all." I hesitated. "Madam, the girl hasn't done anything wrong. Tasha's improving. That should be good news." "Good?" she hissed. "Good is when a doctor tells me it's medicine that worked, not when some filthy street girl prays over my child and suddenly she wakes up." Her hands trembled. For the first time, I noticed how tired she looked, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her lips quivered when she spoke. "Madam," I said softly, "maybe it's faith. Maybe it's not about witchcraft at all." She turned sharply toward me, eyes cold. "You think you know everything because you drive my husband's car, Stay in your place, David." She stormed off, leaving the scent of her expensive perfume hanging in the hallway like smoke. That night I couldn't sleep either. Something about Amani unsettled me, not because I thought she was evil, but because she carried a calmness that didn't belong in a house so full of pain. She had no phone, no belongings, no family that she spoke of. Only a thin leather necklace with a small wooden pendant she never removed. Sometimes I caught her staring at the city lights from the servants' quarters window, her face distant, almost sorrowful. Once I asked, "Where did you learn to pray like that?" She smiled. "From hunger." I frowned. "Hunger?" She nodded. "When you've gone hungry enough, your words stop asking for food. They start asking for strength. That's where faith begins." Her words lingered in my mind long after she went silent again. By the end of the week, Tasha could sit up on her own. The doctors were astonished. Mr. Mwangi seemed lighter, walking with a new sense of hope. He even started having breakfast with his family again. But the household gossip grew thicker than Nairobi dust. The cooks whispered that Amani was a spirit sent from the dead. The maids crossed themselves every time she walked by. When I tried to calm them, one of them, old Mama Esther, shook her head. "Young man," she said, "you don't know these things. When a miracle comes too easy, it comes with a price." I laughed nervously. "You've been watching too many Nigerian movies, Mama Esther?" She didn't laugh back. "Mark my words, David. That girl's eyes see too much." A week later, Mr. Mwangi called me to drive him to a meeting. As we passed through the gate, he looked thoughtful. "David," he said quietly, "you believe in miracles?" I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Yes, sir. I do now." He nodded slowly. "Ruth wants the girl gone. She says she feels uneasy. But I can't turn her out. Not yet." My daughter smiles again. "How can I risk that?" "You shouldn't," I said. "She's done nothing wrong." He sighed deeply. "You know, David, when Tasha fell ill, I thought I could buy her healing. I brought specialists from Europe, even flew in one from India. But all my money did nothing. Then this homeless girl walks in and..." He paused, shaking his head. "I don't understand God sometimes." "Maybe," I said carefully, "He understands you, sir." He smiled faintly. "You always know what to say. That's why I keep you close." We drove in silence for a while. The city buzzed outside, matatas honking, street hawkers shouting, children chasing each other through puddles. But all I could think about was the strange calm that had settled over the Mwangi home, the calm that felt too fragile to last. That evening when we returned, the calm shattered. The house was in chaos, servants running, Ruth shouting. I rushed inside. "What's wrong?" "Where's Amani?" Ruth barked. "Where is that girl?" I looked around. "I thought she was with Tasha." "She was," Ruth said, her voice shaking. "Now she's gone, and so is the child." My stomach dropped. We searched everywhere, the garden, the servant quarters, even the front gate. No sign of them. Mr. Mwangi's face was ashen. "Find them, David. Find my daughter." I jumped into the car and sped down the dirt road, heart pounding. The rain had started again, light but cold. My headlights swept across the wet street until I saw them. Amani walking slowly, carrying Tasha in her arms, wrapped in a blanket. I pulled over sharply. "Amani, what are you doing?" She turned to me, calm as ever. She needed air. The house was suffocating her. "She's sick. You can't just take her out like this." "I asked her mother," Amani said softly, "but she didn't hear me. Her anger is louder than her child's cry." I stared at her. "You could have told someone." "I did," she said, looking up at the rain. "But no one listens when the poor speak." Something in her tone silenced me. She laid Tasha carefully in the back seat and covered her with her shawl. The girl's breathing was calm, peaceful. When we got back, Ruth was waiting by the gate, her eyes blazing. "How dare you?" she screamed, grabbing Amani's arm. "You thief! You witch! You were taking her away." Amani didn't resist. "I was taking her to breathe." Ruth slapped her hard. The sound cracked through the night. "Madam!" I shouted, stepping forward. But Amani just stood still, one hand on her cheek, eyes glistening but not angry. Mr. Mwangi came running. "Ruth, enough. She was stealing our daughter." Ruth cried. "Ask her. She was going to disappear with her." Amani turned toward him. "If I wanted to disappear, I would have never knocked on your gate." Her words hung heavy in the rain. Mr. Mwangi looked between them, torn. "Go inside," he told his wife. Then to Amani, "Please, don't make things harder. I believe you mean well, but Ruth is frightened." "I understand," she said softly. "But you must understand too, your daughter is not the only one who needs healing in this house." With that, she turned and walked back toward the servant quarters, her shadow long under the security lights. That night the storm grew wild. Thunder rolled across the hills. I sat by my window, unable to sleep. Somewhere in the distance I could hear Ruth crying softly, the kind of crying that comes from a wound too deep for words. At dawn I went to check on Amani. The door to her small room was open. She was kneeling on the floor, eyes closed, whispering a prayer I couldn't understand. "Amani," I said softly, "you should rest." She opened her eyes. "Rest will come when peace comes." "Peace from what?" She looked up at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. "There's something dark in that house, David. Something that has nothing to do with sickness." "What do you mean?" "Your master carries secrets," she whispered. "And your madam carries guilt. The child's pain is their punishment." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What are you talking about?" She shook her head slowly. "Soon you'll see." Before I could ask more, a scream echoed from the main house. It was Ruth. We ran toward the sound. In the master bedroom, she was standing by the wardrobe, trembling, holding a torn envelope. Mr. Mwangi stood opposite her, his face pale. "You told me she was dead," Ruth shouted. "You told me the baby died." My heart thudded. "Baby?" Mr. Mwangi's voice was hoarse. "Ruth, please, not now. Don't you dare lie again," she screamed, waving the envelope. "You hid her from me. You let me mourn my own child while you—" Her voice broke. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. Amani stepped forward quietly, her face unreadable. "It begins," she said. And in that moment I realized this wasn't just about healing a sick girl. This was about a buried secret, one powerful enough to destroy the Mwangi family completely. I had seen the Mwangis argue before, small quarrels about staff, money, or business dinners, but never anything like that night. The truth tore through the house like lightning, cracking the walls of silence that had held for years. Ruth sat on the marble floor, clutching the torn envelope against her chest. Her hair was loose, her robe half open, her face streaked with tears and disbelief. Mr. Mwangi stood over her, frozen, a man caught between guilt and helplessness. I hovered at the doorway, not daring to move. "What baby?" I asked quietly, though I already felt the answer crawling at the back of my mind. Ruth looked up at her husband, voice shaking. "Tell him. Tell everyone what you did." Mr. Mwangi closed his eyes. "Ruth? Tell him," she screamed. The echo of her voice bounced through the room. Then with a weary sigh he spoke. "She was born before Tasha," he said softly. "Our first daughter." My heart skipped. "You have another child?" He nodded slowly. We were much younger then. The business was still small. Ruth's father didn't approve of our marriage, and when she got pregnant, we hid it from everyone. The child came early, too early. The doctor said she wouldn't survive the night." Ruth's voice cracked. "But she did survive. You told me she died, Patrick. You told me they buried her." Tears spilled down her face as she waved the letter. "I found this among your old documents, from the nurse who delivered her. Says the baby lived. She was taken to an orphanage in Kibera." My stomach twisted. Kibera, Nairobi's largest slum. I looked at Mr. Mwangi in disbelief. "Sir, you left your child there?" He turned away, voice heavy with regret. "I didn't know she survived. The nurse, she was paid to handle the burial. I never checked." "But you checked the balance sheet of your company every day," Ruth spat. "You checked the profit margins, the land titles, the cars. But you never checked if your child was alive." The silence that followed felt suffocating. Then Amani spoke, her tone calm yet sharp. Now you understand why peace never stayed in this house. Ruth looked at her, confused. What are you saying? Amani stepped forward slowly, her eyes glistening under the chandelier's glow. The pain that built your wealth came from a forgotten womb. A mother's tears don't dry until the truth is seen. Mr. Mwangi's brow furrowed. Enough of your riddles. What do you know about this? Amani met his gaze. More than you think. She reached into her small pouch and pulled out a crumpled paper, a birth certificate yellowed with time. My heart pounded as she held it out. Read it, she said softly. Ruth's trembling hands took the paper. Her eyes scanned the faded words. Then, slowly her mouth fell open. The name read, Amani Mwangi. For a long moment, no one breathed. Mr. Mwangi's voice broke the silence. What did you say your name was again? Amani, she said. You called me Peace. But that name was given to me the day I was born, by the nurse who took pity on me. Ruth's hand went to her mouth. No, that's not possible. I am the child you buried alive in your memory, Amani said, tears slipping down her cheeks. The one you left behind in Kibra. I was told my mother died at birth. That's what they told me. Until one night, a woman in a dream said, Go to the house with golden gates. Your blood is waiting. Mr. Mwangi stumbled backward, his face drained of color. This can't be true. It is, Amani said quietly. The nurse who raised me, her name was Miriam Odieno. She gave me this paper when she was dying. She said, Your parents are rich but their hearts are poor. Ruth began sobbing, shaking her head violently. No. I can't accept this. Amani knelt slowly before her. You don't have to accept me. But your child? She looked toward Tasha's room. She needed her sister's forgiveness to live. The room spun with silence. I could feel the air thicken, the weight of guilt pressing down on every breath. Mr. Mwangi sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Dear God, what have I done? The next days blurred into whispers and tension. The mansion felt smaller, colder. The staff walked on eggshells. Ruth refused to eat. She locked herself in her room most days, coming out only to sit by Tasha's bed. Mr. Mwangi threw himself into work, making endless calls, perhaps trying to drown the guilt in numbers. Only Amani moved quietly through the house, tending to Tasha, helping the maids, cooking in the kitchen as if she'd lived there forever. But even she couldn't hide the sadness in her eyes. One afternoon, I found her in the garden, planting small flowers along the fence. You knew all along, didn't you? I asked softly. She nodded. Since the day I saw his face. I felt it. Why didn't you tell him sooner? Because the truth is heavy. You don't throw it at a man already drowning. Her words struck deep. She pressed her hands into the soil. I didn't come to expose them, David. I came because the child's spirit called me. When one bloodline breaks, another feels the wound. I looked at her, this girl who had lived on the streets, now healing the very family that abandoned her. Do you hate them? I asked. She smiled faintly. Hate is hunger that never ends. I chose to feed my heart with forgiveness instead. I didn't know what to say. So I just stood there watching her plant peace where pain once lived. But peace didn't last long. That evening Ruth called a family meeting. She sat at the dining table, her face pale but composed. Mr. Mwangi sat beside her, eyes distant. Amani stood across from them, her posture humble but firm. I stayed near the door as I always did, unseen but witnessing everything. Ruth cleared her throat. Amani. I've prayed, I've wept, and I've thought. If what you say is true, then you are my child. My firstborn. Amani lowered her gaze. Yes, madam. Don't call me that, Ruth whispered. Call me, mother. Amani's lips trembled. Mother. Tears welled in Ruth's eyes. I don't know how to begin to make it right. You already have, Amani said softly. By seeing me. For a brief, tender moment, they reached for each other's hands. But then Mr. Mwangi spoke, his voice low, uncertain. Ruth, there's something else I must tell you. Ruth looked at him warily. What now? When I thought the baby died, I didn't only let her go. He paused, swallowing hard. I signed documents. Adoption papers. I gave the nurse money to handle it. And she sold the child's file to an agency. That's why I couldn't trace her when I tried later. Ruth's face hardened. You sold our daughter? It wasn't like that, he pleaded. I was confused, ashamed. You lied, Patrick, she cried. You let me mourn for years while you lived with your guilt in silence. What kind of man does that? Amani stood between them. Enough. Her voice, though calm, carried power. Pain gave birth to pain. But if you let anger rule, you'll lose what little is left. Ruth sank back into her chair, sobbing quietly. Amani turned to her father. You were wrong. But you can still choose right. Start with honesty. Mr. Mwangi nodded weakly. You're right. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'll earn it. That night I drove him to Kibra. The roads were muddy, the air thick with smoke and frying oil. Children played barefoot in the alleys, laughter echoing against rusted tin walls. We stopped at a small church where a frail woman waited under the porch. Sister Maria, the nun who had once helped run the orphanage. Patrick Mwangi, she said quietly when she saw him. You finally came. He bowed his head. I came to atone. She handed him a small box. Miriam kept this. She said it belonged to the child. Inside is the only thing she had from you. He opened it. Inside was a tiny silver cross engraved with the initials PRM. Tears filled his eyes. I gave that to Ruth on our wedding day. She wore it when she gave birth, the nun said softly. When we thought the baby was gone, Miriam took it, hoping one day it would lead her home. Mr. Mwangi clutched it to his chest. It did, he whispered. It led her home. When we returned, the house was quiet, too quiet. I parked the car and followed him inside. From upstairs, a faint humming drifted down, Amani's voice. We climbed the stairs and found her in Tasha's room. The little girl was sitting up, coloring with crayons. Her cheeks glowed with life. Mama, look, she said, holding up her drawing. It showed 4 figures, a tall man, a woman, a small girl, and another taller girl standing beside them. Ruth smiled weakly. That's beautiful, my love. Who's this one? Tasha asked, pointing at the taller girl. Ruth hesitated. Before she could answer, Amani knelt beside her and said softly, That's me. Your big sister. Tasha giggled. I have a sister? Yes, Amani said, brushing a curl from her face. And I'll always protect you. Ruth turned away, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Mr. Mwangi watched them, guilt and pride battling in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered to Amani. She looked up at him. Don't thank me. Thank God that mercy still finds the broken. That night, as I stood by the garden, watching the lights of Nairobi flicker in the distance, I felt something shift in the air. For the first time since she arrived, Amani wasn't just a stranger at the gate. She was blood. But peace never stays long in houses built on secrets. Because by the next dawn, a black car would stop at the gate, carrying a man who claimed Amani was not who she said she was. The rain that evening came down in silver sheets, blurring the city lights into long ribbons of gold and blue. I was in the driver's quarters, wiping the dashboard of the Lexus, when I heard it, the faint, panicked sobbing of a child. I froze. That voice didn't belong to any of the house staff. I stepped outside, the cold rain quickly soaking through my shirt. Then I saw her, Zara, the billionaire's daughter, curled beside the gate in the rain, clutching her knees, trembling like a leaf. Her pajamas clung to her small frame, her face wet with tears and water. I rushed forward. Zara, what are you doing out here? I crouched beside her, trying to shield her from the downpour. She told me not to scream, Zara whispered, voice shaking. She said the pain will stop soon. But it hurts so much. My blood went cold. Who said that? The witch girl, she sniffed. The one everyone hates. My heart thudded. You mean Amina? Zara nodded slowly. She came to my window. She said she could help. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. That meant Amina had entered the compound again. Despite the guards, despite the electrified fence, she'd found a way in. Where is she now? I asked urgently. Zara's eyes darted toward the back garden. I grabbed my flashlight and ran, boots splashing in puddles. The rain made everything a blur, but I saw her, a small figure kneeling beneath the mango tree, her thin dress clinging to her frame, lips moving in silent prayer. Amina. I called out. She turned slowly, her face pale, eyes glimmering like wet amber. Please, she whispered. She was burning inside. I only wanted to help her. Before I could respond, Zara screamed, a sharp, terrified sound that sliced through the rain. I spun around and saw her collapse to the ground, her tiny body convulsing. I ran to her side, lifting her into my arms. Zara, stay with me. Her skin was burning hot, her breath ragged. The rain hissed against her body like steam. Amina rushed forward, her small hands trembling. Let me help her. Please. I know what's wrong. I didn't know what to do. Everything inside me screamed to protect the child, but another voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, this girl had a gift beyond what anyone could explain. Tell me what you're going to do, I demanded. She's been cursed by fear, Amina said softly. Not witchcraft, fear. The sickness has roots in her mind. But I can calm her. Calm her? With what? With this. She held up a string of rough wooden beads, worn and frayed. My grandmother taught me. It's prayer, not magic. Before I could decide, Zara's breathing faltered, her small chest rising shallowly. Do it, I said hoarsely. Whatever you need to do, do it. Amina knelt beside Zara and began to chant softly, words I couldn't understand, Swahili mixed with something older. Her palms hovered above the child's chest. For a moment the air seemed to still. The rain softened to a drizzle. Then, Zara's body relaxed. The tension left her face. Her breathing steadied. I stared in disbelief. Amina slumped forward, exhausted. She'll sleep now. But she must rest for 3 days. And no one should disturb her. How did you? I began, but she was already stumbling away toward the shadows. Wait. I called after her. You can't go out there, it's cold, it's dangerous. But she didn't turn. The gate clicked softly behind her as she disappeared into the night. When I carried Zara back inside, Mrs. Kamau nearly fainted. What happened to her? She cried. She had an attack, I said quietly. But she's resting now. By morning Zara was sitting up in bed, weak but smiling. The fever had broken completely. The doctor who examined her shook his head in amazement. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. Yesterday her vitals were critical. Today she's normal. Word spread fast. The staff whispered about the witch girl who had healed the billionaire's daughter. When Mr. Kamau returned that evening, his face was a storm. Where is she? He demanded. Where is the one who touched my child? I tried to explain, but he cut me off. You're telling me a street girl crept into my home, touched my daughter, and you stood by? Sir, I said carefully, your daughter would have died without her. Don't speak to me about miracles. His voice cracked with fury. If she steps foot here again, I'll have her arrested. But the next morning something happened that silenced even him. Zara walked into the living room holding her father's hand, smiling. Papa, she said softly, I saw Grandma last night. She said the girl is good. She said we must help her. Mr. Kamau froze. His mother had passed away 10 years earlier. His face drained of color. What did she tell you, Zara? He asked, voice trembling. She said the girl carries pain that isn't hers, Zara whispered. And if you push her away, our home will never have peace. The room went quiet. That night, Mr. Kamau called me into his study. Find her, he said quietly. Bring her back. But no one must know. I nodded. For the next 3 days I searched the alleys, bus stops, and abandoned lots around Kawangware. I asked every street vendor and beggar I could find. No one had seen her. Some said she'd been taken by a preacher's wife. Others claimed she vanished into the night. On the 4th day I found her. She was sitting beside a burning drum near the edge of a market, her face streaked with ash, her eyes hollow from hunger. When she saw me she flinched. You shouldn't be here. They'll think you're cursed too. I don't care, I said. Your healing worked. Zara's alive. The family wants to see you. She stared at me like she didn't believe it. They want to see me? Yes. A tear slipped down her cheek. But they said I was evil. Maybe they were wrong, I said gently. Maybe you were meant to change that. Amina stood slowly, the wind lifting her tangled hair. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, all right, I'll come. But only if she wants me to. When we arrived at the mansion, Zara ran to her, wrapping her small arms around Amina's waist. You came back, she cried. Amina knelt, her eyes soft. I promised, didn't I? Mrs. Kamau stood in the doorway, hesitant. Mr. Kamau watched from behind her, arms crossed. His jaw was tight, but there was something different in his eyes. Less anger, more confusion. Thank you for saving my daughter, he said finally, his voice low. But understand this, I don't believe in witchcraft. Whatever you did, I can't explain it. But I'm grateful. Amina lowered her gaze. I didn't use witchcraft, sir. I used prayer. He nodded stiffly. You'll stay here until Zara is fully recovered. After that, we'll see. And that was how it began. The strange, uneasy peace between a homeless girl accused of witchcraft and a billionaire's family that didn't believe in miracles. But what none of us knew then was that her presence would soon uncover secrets buried deeper than anyone imagined. Secrets that would shake the Kamau household to its very foundation. The days that followed were heavy with whispers. Everyone in the Kamau mansion had something to say about the strange homeless girl who had healed the boss's daughter. Some called her an angel in disguise, others still spat the word witch behind her back. But I, Peter Mwangi, the driver who'd brought her back, saw something different. I saw a girl with a piece that didn't belong to this world. Amina barely spoke those first few mornings. She stayed near the small guest quarters behind the garden, spending her hours tending to the flowers that had long been forgotten. The gardener, old Weeksa, used to ignore that patch of soil because nothing ever grew there. But in a week, green began to push through the brown. One evening as I walked past, I found her kneeling, hands deep in the earth. "Those seeds died long ago," I said quietly. Amina looked up, smiling faintly. "Sometimes when no one watches they wait. The ground just needed kindness." Her words lingered in my mind long after I'd gone. Inside the main house, tension brewed. Mr. Kamau had kept his promise to let her stay, but it was clear he wasn't comfortable. He kept his distance, observing her every move through narrowed eyes. Mrs. Kamau was different. The woman who'd once called Amina a witch now followed her like a shadow, torn between fear and gratitude. She'd sit on the veranda, watching as Amina helped Zara walk slowly through the garden paths, the child's laughter echoing softly. Zara was changing too. She smiled more. The dark rings under her eyes had vanished. She'd begun drawing again, filling her sketchbook with pictures of flowers, angels, and a strange figure with glowing hands. "She says it's Amina," Mrs. Kamau told me one afternoon, her tone uneasy. "She says Amina glows when she prays." I hesitated. "Children see purity differently, madam." She sighed, lowering her gaze. "Maybe. But it scares me sometimes." That weekend something unusual happened. Zara refused to eat dinner unless Amina sat with her. It was awkward. Amina, dressed in a clean donated dress, sat at the long mahogany dining table where every piece of silver gleamed. She held her fork as if it were something precious. Mr. Kamau sat at the head of the table, silent. The sound of cutlery scraping plates filled the room. Then Zara broke the silence. "Papa," she said, "Amina told me you don't sleep." The fork froze halfway to his mouth. "What did you say?" "She said you walk in your study at night, talking to Grandma." Mr. Kamau's face hardened. He turned slowly toward Amina. "Did you tell her that?" Amina looked down. "I only said that grief makes people talk to those they miss. I didn't mean—" "Enough." His voice was sharp. "Don't plant ideas in my daughter's mind." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "She didn't, Papa. I heard you myself. You said, 'I failed you, Mary.' You said it." The room went still. Mrs. Kamau's hand trembled as she set down her glass. "Zara, that's enough," she whispered. But Mr. Kamau's face was pale now, his voice breaking. "Zara, go to your room." The little girl obeyed, tears slipping down her cheeks. When she was gone, the air grew heavy. Mr. Kamau rose slowly. "Amina," he said, "whatever game you're playing, it ends now. You'll leave tomorrow morning." "Sir," I began, "please." "She's a child," he barked. "A child who shouldn't know what happens in my private hours. Unless someone put those words in her head." Amina said nothing. She just lowered her eyes and whispered, "As you wish." She stood, bowed slightly, and left the room without another word. That night I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. The mansion, usually silent, carried a strange stillness. I decided to check on Amina in the guest quarters. The rain had started again, thin and cold. When I opened her door, the room was empty. The bed was neatly made. On the pillow lay a folded paper. I picked it up and opened it under the light of my phone. The handwriting was small and graceful. "Tell Zara not to be afraid. Her mother watches her. Tell Mr. Kamau his pain is not punishment, it's a warning. The truth he hides is what hurts her most." My heart pounded. I ran to the house. Inside, lights flickered in the hall. Zara was crying in her sleep. Mrs. Kamau knelt beside her bed, whispering prayers. Mr. Kamau stood at the door, pale and shaking. "She said Mary's name," he muttered. "She said things no one knows." "What things?" I asked quietly. He turned, eyes wild. "She said Mary didn't die from sickness. That she was pushed." My mouth went dry. "Sir, is it true?" He stared at me for a long time before looking away. "No. Of course not." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. By morning, Amina had vanished again. Zara refused to eat or speak. "She's gone because of Papa," she said. "Grandma is angry now." I didn't know what to say. 2 days later, a knock came at the gate. It was a woman dressed in bright kitenge fabric, her face weathered but kind. She introduced herself as Mama Ruth, a caretaker from a local orphanage. "I believe you're looking for a girl named Amina," she said. "She came to us last night. She said she's ready to remember." We followed her to the edge of Kibera, where the orphanage stood, a crumbling compound with fading murals of smiling children. Amina was sitting under a jacaranda tree, surrounded by a few younger kids. When she saw Zara, she smiled. "You came." Zara ran into her arms. "Please come home," she cried. "Papa is sorry." Amina stroked her hair gently. "No, my dear. Home is where truth lives. And your father still hides from it." Mr. Kamau stood frozen, the words striking him like stones. Mama Ruth came forward, her expression solemn. "This girl has seen things she shouldn't. Her mother died in a fire. The people said she started it with witchcraft. But I was there. The fire started because her stepfather tried to burn her alive." The silence was unbearable. Amina's eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't look away. "He said I was cursed," she whispered. "He said I brought misfortune to the house. But I only wanted him to stop hurting my mother." Mrs. Kamau covered her mouth, gasping. Mr. Kamau turned pale. "So she's an orphan?" Mama Ruth nodded. "She's a survivor." Then Amina lifted her gaze to him. "You hide your guilt behind wealth, sir. But the pain in your home is not Zara's sickness, it's your secret." Mr. Kamau's voice trembled. "You don't know anything about me." "Your wife's accident," Amina said softly. "It wasn't an accident." Mrs. Kamau's head snapped toward him. "What is she saying?" But before he could answer, Zara fainted. We rushed her back to the mansion, fear choking the air. The doctor arrived, but even he couldn't explain it. "Her pulse is strong, but she's not waking," he said, shaking his head. Amina sat by Zara's bedside all night, holding her small hand. "She's carrying her father's burden," she murmured. "She won't wake until he speaks." Mr. Kamau paced the hallway like a man haunted. Finally, just before dawn, he stopped. His shoulders slumped. "I can't hide anymore," he said quietly. We gathered around Zara's bed. His voice was raw as he spoke. "I did it," he whispered. "I caused Mary's death." Mrs. Kamau gasped, stepping back. What do you mean?" He sank into a chair, face in his hands. "We were fighting. She'd found out about my affair. I pushed her. She hit her head. I told everyone she slipped in the shower. I thought I buried it, but I see now that God doesn't forget." Tears streamed down his face. Zara must have felt it. The guilt, it poisoned her. The room was silent except for the sound of his sobbing. Amina leaned forward, her hand resting gently on Zara's forehead. "Now the truth is spoken," she whispered. "The curse is broken." Zara stirred. Slowly, her eyelids fluttered open. "Papa?" she murmured. He grabbed her hand, trembling. "I'm here, my angel. I'm so sorry." Amina rose quietly and stepped back, her expression calm. "She'll recover now," she said softly. When she turned to leave, Mrs. Kamau caught her arm. "Where will you go?" Amina smiled faintly. "Wherever I'm needed. There are many hearts still bleeding in silence." Mr. Kamau looked at her with tears in his eyes. "You have given me my life back," he said. "Please let me give you a home." But Amina only shook her head. "A home is not built of walls, sir. It's built of peace. When you find that, then you'll see me again." She walked out into the soft morning light, barefoot, her small figure disappearing down the driveway as the first sun touched the wet ground. And for the first time in years, the Kamau mansion felt still, peaceful, almost holy. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. The girl who'd been accused of witchcraft had not only healed a child, she had healed a family. And yet, the world outside was still cruel to those like her. Some miracles, I realized, come wrapped in pain. 4 weeks after Amina's departure, the Kamau mansion existed in uneasy silence. It wasn't the silence of peace, it was the kind that hummed with unfinished business, like a wound that had closed too quickly over something still festering beneath. Zara recovered faster than any doctor expected. Within days she was laughing again, running through the corridors and singing the old lullabies her grandmother used to hum. Yet every night before bed she knelt by her window whispering prayers for Amina, the girl who glowed. Mr. Kamau tried to return to his work, meetings, boardrooms, charity dinners, but I could tell his spirit wasn't there. The confession had freed him, yes, but it had also stripped him bare. Nairobi's business elite noticed his absence of confidence. He looked like a man haunted by something greater than guilt. He looked like a man changed. One morning as I was polishing the car, I overheard 2 guards talking. "They say the boss is losing his mind," one whispered. I heard too. The man confessed to his wife's death in front of witnesses. If that girl talks, he's finished. I pretended not to hear, but the words stung. Rumors were spreading beyond the gates now. Nairobi's gossip columns had caught a whiff of the billionaire's haunted house. The truth, Amina's truth, had begun to slip out. It started when a street preacher stood outside the Kamau estate one Saturday morning, shouting into a megaphone. Repent. You hid the child of fire, the healer accused of witchcraft. You let her wander while her hands carried light. Within hours, a crowd had gathered outside the gate. Some came to pray. Others came to curse. I saw Mrs. Kamau peeking through the curtains, her face pale. Peter, she whispered, what's happening out there? It's about Amina, I said quietly. People think she's either a saint or a witch reborn. They want answers. She covered her mouth. Oh Lord, they'll destroy us. And she wasn't wrong. That evening, a video surfaced online, grainy footage of Amina healing Zara, filmed secretly by one of the household staff. Within hours it had gone viral. Comments flooded in from all over Kenya and even abroad. That girl's not human. She's an angel. Look at the light around her hands. This is witchcraft. Why is she near a child? The world had chosen sides and the Kamau family was caught in the middle. By Monday, reporters camped at the gates, thrusting microphones at anyone who entered or left. The headline on the Nairobi Chronicle read, Billionaire's daughter healed by street witch, miracle or deception? Mr. Kamau's publicist called in panic. Sir, we must release a statement, deny everything before this becomes a scandal. But for once, the man who built empires from words said nothing. He simply stared out the window and murmured, truth needs no statement. Mrs. Kamau wasn't so calm. She paced the living room, clutching her rosary. They'll come for her, Peter, she said, voice trembling. They'll find Amina and hurt her. Maybe not, I said. Maybe it's time people saw who she really is. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't that simple. Nairobi had no mercy for those who didn't fit its mold. 3 nights later we got the call. It was from Mama Ruth, the caretaker of the orphanage. They took her, she sobbed over the phone. The police came. They said she was practicing witchcraft near the market. They're taking her to the station. By dawn I was already on the road with Mr. Kamau. He hadn't said a word since the call, just sat beside me in the car, his jaw tight. When we reached the police station, a small crowd had gathered. Inside, through the iron bars, I saw her, Amina, sitting quietly on the cold floor, hands folded on her lap. She looked tired but calm, almost peaceful. The officer at the desk sneered when he saw us. So this is the big man they say she healed. You've brought trouble to yourself, Mheshimiwa. Mr. Kamau slammed his hand on the counter. She's a child. You can't hold her like this. She's 17, the officer replied coolly. Old enough to answer for her actions. People say she's been casting spells, touching children, muttering strange things in tongues. That's prayer, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. The officer leaned back in his chair, unimpressed. Prayer, witchcraft, it's the same thing when the wrong people see it. Mr. Kamau's anger burned through the room. How much? He said finally. The officer blinked. What? How much to let her go? I saw the hesitation in the man's eyes. This isn't about money, Mheshimiwa. People are watching. The media's outside. And indeed they were, camera flashes popping through the windows. The same world that ignored her when she slept on the streets now wanted to witness her humiliation. Then a voice came from the corridor. Let her go. We turned. It was Reverend George, the local parish priest. His presence commanded silence. This child has suffered enough, he said calmly. If you arrest her for healing, then you must arrest every doctor who saves a life. The officer hesitated, glancing at the Reverend's collar, then at Mr. Kamau's grim expression. Fine. But take her quietly. And keep her away from the market. We rushed her out before the cameras caught us. In the car she sat between us, silent. Why didn't you run? I asked softly. You could have escaped. She smiled faintly. You can't run from light, Peter. It always finds you. Mr. Kamau gripped the steering wheel. You're coming home with us, he said firmly. I'll protect you this time. But Amina shook her head. Your home needs truth, not protection. He turned to her, eyes red. And what truth is left, Amina? I confessed. I lost my dignity. What else can the world take from me? She looked at him with quiet pity. You haven't forgiven yourself. He said nothing. When we reached the mansion, the gates were blocked by protesters, some holding candles, others waving placards. Free the healer, Keep witchcraft away from our children. It was chaos, faith against fear. Security cleared the way as we hurried Amina inside. Zara ran to her immediately, sobbing with joy. I knew you'd come back. Amina knelt and embraced her. I had to. There's still one last healing left. That night, as the world outside raged, the mansion felt like a sanctuary of trembling faith. Amina stood in the grand hall, her small frame lit by the flickering chandelier. Mr. Kamau and his wife stood before her, unsure, humbled. Your house is full of voices, Amina said softly. Not ghosts, memories. They keep shouting because you've never listened. What do you mean? Mrs. Kamau whispered. You built this home on silence. You hide pain behind expensive things. You forgive in words but not in your hearts. That is why peace never stays. Tears filled the woman's eyes. What should we do? Amina closed her eyes and began to pray, low melodic words that seemed to wash through the room like wind through leaves. Zara joined in, holding her parents' hands. For the first time I saw Mr. Kamau weep openly, his body shaking as years of pride melted away. When it was over, the mansion was quiet. No whisper, no echo, just stillness. Amina turned to leave. Where will you go? I asked. She smiled, eyes soft and distant. Where I'm needed next. The next morning she was gone again. But this time she didn't vanish into fear. She left behind a letter, folded neatly on Zara's pillow. Don't cry when people call me a witch. Witches harm, but healers carry pain so others don't have to. You'll grow strong, Zara. Your father will learn peace. And the world will see. A week later, international media caught wind of her story again. This time, not as a scandal but a miracle. The headlines changed. Homeless girl saves billionaire's daughter. From accused witch to angel of Nairobi. People who had once cursed her now called her blessed. Churches debated her story. Scholars tried to explain it. But for me, Peter Mwangi, her story was something simpler. She had reminded me that faith has no shape, no title, no home. And somewhere in the city's heartbeat, I believed Amina was still walking barefoot, healing hearts the world refused to see. The morning after the confrontation between Mrs. Mwangi and the girl was tense. The house, once full of laughter and the quiet rhythm of routine, now felt like a courtroom. The staff whispered in corners, their eyes flicking toward the main house, waiting for something to happen. I tried to keep busy, cleaning the Range Rover and checking the generators, but my mind was restless. I couldn't shake the image of that girl, Zawadi, standing with her hands trembling, eyes wide, pleading not to be sent away. There had been such terror in her voice, but also something pure. When I returned to the house, I found Mr. Mwangi pacing the corridor. He looked worn out, his tie loose, his shirt unbuttoned at the neck. The man who once commanded every boardroom in Nairobi now looked like he had been fighting invisible battles all night. Sam, he said, his voice heavy. Where is she? She's outside, sir. By the servant quarters. She's been there since last night. Didn't touch her breakfast. He nodded, pressing his palm to his forehead. I need to talk to her. I followed him outside, my heart thumping. The morning sun had begun to break through the mist, and there she was, kneeling by the garden, whispering quietly to herself. She wasn't crying this time. She looked peaceful. When she saw us, she rose and bowed her head slightly. Zawadi, Mr. Mwangi said softly. I owe you an apology. She shook her head quickly. No, sir. You owe me nothing. I do, he said, his voice firm. Because I let fear make me cruel. You healed my daughter when doctors couldn't, and instead of gratitude, I let suspicion poison this house. I believed lies because they were easier than faith. I saw tears glisten in his eyes. Zawadi looked stunned. Sir, I never wanted to cause trouble. I just wanted to help. When I touched your daughter, I saw pain, like a light trapped in darkness. I just wanted the light to breathe again. He swallowed hard. And you did. You gave us back our child. Then from the main house, Mrs. Mwangi's sharp voice cut through the air. Peter, what are you doing? She stormed down the steps, her robe flapping in the wind, anger flashing in her eyes. I won't let you be fooled by this girl again, she hissed. You don't see what's happening? She's a witch. She's manipulating you. Zawadi flinched but didn't move. Mr. Mwangi turned to his wife with a calmness I had never seen in him before. Enough, Miriam, he said quietly. No more of this. You're hurting her, and yourself. She's cursed our home. Miriam cried. Ever since she came, I've been seeing things. Shadows. Coldness. Don't you feel it? Miriam, he said again, stepping closer, that coldness is fear. It's not her doing, it's ours. Mrs. Mwangi's lips trembled. For a moment she looked lost, like a woman who had carried too much pain for too long. Then suddenly she broke down. Her knees gave way and she collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing. "I just wanted to protect us," she wept. "I can't lose another child, Peter. I can't." The words hit me like a blow. "Another child?" Zawadi's eyes widened too. She whispered softly, "You lost one before?" Mr. Mwangi helped his wife stand, his eyes glistening with tears. "Our firstborn," he said, voice cracking. "She died when she was 8. Malaria." Miriam never forgave herself for not getting her to the hospital in time. Since then, she's carried that guilt everywhere. The silence that followed was thick with sorrow. Then Zawadi stepped forward slowly, her voice trembling but clear. "Madam, your daughter is at peace. She wants you to stop punishing yourself. She showed me your face once in a dream." She was smiling. Mrs. Mwangi gasped, staring at her as though she had been struck by lightning. "How do you know that?" she whispered. "I didn't," Zawadi said softly. "Not until now." Mrs. Mwangi covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The anger drained out of her, replaced by something fragile and raw. I watched, stunned, as she reached out a shaking hand toward Zawadi. For a moment, it hovered in the air, then finally rested on the girl's shoulder. "Forgive me," she whispered. "Forgive me for calling you names, for hating you." Zawadi smiled faintly. "I already did." That morning something changed in the Mwangi household. It was as though the walls themselves exhaled after holding their breath for too long. By evening, the staff whispered that Madam had taken food to the girl herself. I saw them sitting together in the garden, speaking quietly as the sun dipped behind the jacaranda trees. I stood at a distance, watching, unable to believe what I was seeing. Later, as I drove Mr. Mwangi back from the office, he said, "Sam, sometimes blessings come in forms that scare us first." I nodded. "She's special, sir." He smiled faintly. "No, Sam. She's a miracle we almost threw away." The following week, reporters began to appear outside the gate again. Word had spread about the homeless healer. People brought sick relatives, photos, offerings. It was chaos. Mr. Mwangi called the security guards and ordered the gates closed to everyone. "This is not a circus," he said firmly. "She's just a girl." But the rumors wouldn't stop. Some said she was a prophetess, others that she was an angel. Still others, those who clung to fear, called her a witch. One night as I brought tea to the guard post, I heard her crying softly outside. "Are you all right?" I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes red but gentle. "They keep shouting things at the gate. They say I'll bring doom." I clenched my jaw. "You've done nothing but good." "I know," she whispered. "But good things frighten people who live too long in the dark." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her words, and about how fragile truth becomes when it stands against fear. 2 days later, tragedy struck. Mr. Mwangi's daughter, the one Zawadi had healed, fell ill again, suddenly and violently. She fainted during dinner, her body trembling, lips turning pale. I rushed her to the hospital with them, my heart pounding. The doctors ran tests, frowning, whispering among themselves. After hours of waiting, the doctor finally came out and said, "We can't find anything wrong physically. It's as if her system just shut down." Mrs. Mwangi began to sob uncontrollably. Then Zawadi, who had been standing silently in the corner, spoke in a trembling voice. "It's not her body that's sick. It's her spirit. Someone's calling her." "What do you mean?" I asked, my throat dry. She looked at me with eyes that seemed far older than her years. "Someone doesn't want her to live. They've tied her soul with fear." Before anyone could stop her, she walked into the hospital room and placed her hands gently on the girl's chest. Mr. Mwangi started to protest, but I touched his arm. "Sir, let her try." The air in the room changed. The lights flickered and a strange stillness filled the space. Zawadi began to whisper in Swahili, her words low and rhythmic. Then all at once the little girl's body jerked, and she gasped for air. The monitor beeped wildly. The nurse ran in shouting, "She's breathing. She's back." Mrs. Mwangi fell to her knees, sobbing with relief. Mr. Mwangi stood frozen, tears running down his face. And Zawadi, she simply smiled, wiped her eyes and whispered, "She'll be all right now." When we got home that night, Mr. Mwangi called the staff together. He stood tall, his voice steady. "From today," he said, "this girl is under my protection. Anyone who speaks ill of her will answer to me. She saved my daughter's life, not once but twice. She's part of this family now." No one dared argue. But as I looked at Zawadi, I noticed something that sent a chill through me. She looked weaker. Paler. Like the healing had taken something out of her. I wanted to ask if she was okay, but she only smiled faintly and whispered, "Every light that shines must give something of itself away." I didn't understand what she meant then. But I would soon. Because the peace that settled over the Mwangi family after that night was the kind that comes just before a storm. A storm that would change everything again. The storm began the very next morning. I woke up before dawn to the sound of thunder rolling over Nairobi, deep and angry. Rain hammered the roof, and the sky flashed white every few seconds. It felt like the heavens themselves were restless. By 7, the Mwangi residence was chaos. The guards were arguing at the gate. Reporters had returned, their cameras flashing through the rain, shouting questions. Rumors had spread overnight that a homeless witch had resurrected a billionaire's child. The internet was on fire. When I got to the main house, Zawadi was sitting quietly in the living room, her hands folded in her lap. She looked so small against the velvet couch, her wet braids clinging to her neck. Mrs. Mwangi stood by the window, staring out at the sea of reporters. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable. Mr. Mwangi was on the phone, his tone tight and controlled. "No," I said, "no interviews. This is a private matter." He hung up, rubbing his temples. When he turned, he noticed Zawadi and hesitated. "You should go upstairs and rest, child," he said gently. "You've done enough." But she shook her head. "It's not over yet, sir." Her voice was quiet but sure. "What do you mean?" I asked, my chest tightening. She turned those haunting eyes toward me. "Something still follows your daughter. The darkness hasn't gone. It's angry now, because I broke what it bound." Mrs. Mwangi shuddered. "Stop talking like that. Please." Zawadi looked down. "I wish I could." Mr. Mwangi crossed his arms. "Are you saying someone is still trying to harm my family?" Zawadi nodded. "Yes. Someone close. Very close." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the air. By mid-morning the rain had stopped, but the sky remained gray. Inside the house, tension buzzed like a trapped fly. The little girl Aisha had recovered completely. She was laughing again, drawing on the floor with her crayons. But Zawadi stayed distant, quiet, her eyes constantly flicking toward the windows as if she sensed something outside. I found her later in the servants' corridor, standing by the door. "Why are you here alone?" I asked. "I'm listening," she whispered. "For what?" "For the one who hides." Her voice sent chills down my spine. She turned to me suddenly. "Sam, do you believe in curses?" I hesitated. "I believe in evil, yes. But curses? I'm not sure." She smiled sadly. "You don't have to believe for them to work. You only have to ignore them long enough." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from the living room. We both ran out. The glass vase that stood on the center table had shattered into pieces. Mrs. Mwangi was standing beside it, shaking. "It just fell," she whispered. "I didn't touch it." But as I bent to clean the shards, I noticed something else. On the wall above the table in the dust were faint marks. Not scratches. Symbols. "Did someone draw this?" I asked. Zawadi crouched beside me, her face suddenly pale. "No. That's not a drawing. It's a warning." Later that evening, when the family gathered for dinner, the house felt unusually cold. Even the lights seemed dimmer. Halfway through the meal, Aisha dropped her spoon and stared blankly at the wall. "What is it, sweetheart?" her mother asked. Aisha tilted her head. "She's here." "Who's here?" I asked gently. "The lady with the red eyes." Everyone froze. "What lady, Aisha?" Mr. Mwangi said softly. "The one who comes when I sleep. She says I should come play with her forever." Mrs. Mwangi screamed. "Enough. Don't say that." Aisha started crying and I quickly picked her up. "It's okay, baby. It's okay." Zawadi stood and whispered something I couldn't catch. Her eyes were distant, as though she was seeing beyond the walls. Then without warning the lights flickered and went out. Aisha screamed again. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam caught something. Movement in the corridor. A shadow, long and slender, slipping past the wall. "Who's there?" I shouted. No answer. Only silence. Zawadi's voice came low and firm. "She's angry. She wants to finish what she started." "Who?" I demanded. But before she could answer, the generator kicked in and the lights returned. When we looked again, the shadow was gone. That night, no one slept. Zawadi stayed in Aisha's room, sitting by her bed, humming quietly. Mr. and Mrs. Mwangi prayed together for the first time in years. I kept watch from the hallway, every creak of the floorboards making my heart jump. Around midnight I saw her, Zawadi, rise slowly and walk to the window. The moonlight fell across her face, and she looked almost otherworldly. "She's coming," she whispered. "The one who sent the curse." Before I could ask, the window burst open. The curtains flew wildly, though there was no wind. The air grew icy. Aisha stirred in her sleep, her small hands twitching. Zawadi placed her hands on the child's chest again, whispering prayers I didn't understand. And then, something laughed. A cold, hollow sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Mrs. Mwangi ran in shouting, "What's happening?" Mr. Mwangi grabbed his daughter, but Zawadi shouted, "Don't touch her." Then she pointed toward the doorway, and for a second we all saw it. A figure. Faint, pale, almost transparent. A woman's shape, her hair long, her eyes glowing red. Mrs. Mwangi screamed. Zawadi stepped forward, trembling but fearless. "You don't belong here," she cried. The figure hissed like steam. "She is mine." The lamps flickered violently. Aisha's body arched on the bed. I rushed to hold her, but Zawadi raised her hand. "Let me." She pressed her palms together and began chanting softly in Kikuyu, her voice gaining strength with each word. The shadow twisted, shrieked, and for a moment, the entire room felt as though it was spinning. Then with one last flash of light, it vanished. The air stilled. Aisha slumped back onto the bed, breathing softly. We all stood there, speechless. Zawadi swayed on her feet, exhausted. "It's done," she murmured. "She won't come back." "Who was she?" Mr. Mwangi asked, voice shaking. Zawadi looked at him sadly. "Your late sister. She wanted revenge." Mrs. Mwangi gasped. "Peter, your sister? But she's been dead for years." Zawadi nodded. "She carried anger when she died, jealousy. She thought your wealth should have been hers. When your daughter was born, that anger found a way back. It wanted what she never had, your love." Mr. Mwangi sat heavily in a chair, his face pale. "Oh my God. She's gone now," Zawadi said gently. Forgiveness freed her. The room fell silent. The next morning the sun finally returned, flooding the compound with light. The air felt new, cleansed. Zawadi was in the garden, her face turned toward the sky, eyes closed. She looked peaceful but tired, too tired. Mr. Mwangi joined her quietly. "You saved us again," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "No, sir. I only showed you what was already within. You saved yourselves." He shook his head. "You've done more for this family than anyone ever has. You deserve a home here. A real one." But she only looked away. "Homes are not always made of walls, sir. Sometimes they're made of hearts. And yours is mending." Then she turned and walked toward the gate. "Where are you going?" I asked, stepping forward. "To where I'm needed next," she said quietly. "Light doesn't stay in one place. It travels." "But what about us?" Mrs. Mwangi asked from the doorway, tears in her eyes. Zawadi smiled. "You'll be fine now. Just remember, love heals faster than fear." And before anyone could stop her, she slipped out through the gate, barefoot, disappearing into the morning sun. 4 days after she left, the house felt different. Lighter, quieter, almost holy. Aisha laughed more. Mrs. Mwangi smiled again. Mr. Mwangi stopped carrying his burdens like stones in his chest. And I, every morning when I saw the sunrise, found myself whispering a prayer for the strange girl who had changed everything. Because deep down I knew we hadn't helped her. She had helped us find the part of ourselves we'd forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, that was her true gift all along. It had been 2 weeks since Zawadi disappeared, and yet her presence lingered in every corner of that house like the scent of rain after a storm. Every morning when I drove Mr. Mwangi to his office in Westlands, we passed by the intersection near Uhuru Park where we'd first seen her, barefoot, with a small woven bag on her shoulder. I always slowed down without meaning to, scanning the faces of the street vendors and beggars, hoping foolishly to see her again. But she was gone. The family tried to move on. The gates were quiet now, the reporters had found new stories to chase, and little Aisha was back in school. Yet, beneath the calm, there was a strange emptiness, like a house missing one heartbeat. Sometimes at night, I would hear the family's laughter at dinner and think, she should be here to see this. But she wasn't. And then one morning, everything changed again. I was polishing the Prado when the guard came running toward me, holding a folded newspaper. "Sam, you need to see this." I frowned and took it. The headline read, Mystery healer of Nairobi sighted in Makueni, locals claim she raised a child from death. My heart skipped. The grainy picture beneath the headline showed her, Zawadi, wearing the same faded blue dress she'd worn when she left us. Her hair was tied with a red scarf, her hands lifted over a small child lying motionless on the ground. She's alive, I whispered. I rushed inside to show Mr. and Mrs. Mwangi. They stared at the paper, silent. Then Mrs. Mwangi whispered, "We need to find her." 2 days later we were driving down the long winding road to Makueni. The sky stretched wide and blue, the air heavy with the scent of dust and acacia trees. Aisha was with us, her tiny face pressed against the window. "Do you think she'll remember me, Uncle Sam?" I smiled softly. "How could she forget you?" When we arrived, a small crowd had gathered near a church at the edge of the village. People were murmuring, praying, whispering her name like a song. "Where is she?" Mr. Mwangi asked a woman nearby. The woman pointed toward a small hut made of mud and tin. "She's inside, praying for the sick. But she's weak. The power takes too much from her." My stomach tightened. We walked quietly toward the hut. Inside, the air was warm and thick with the smell of herbs and candle wax. And there she was, kneeling on the floor, surrounded by children. She looked thinner, her skin pale, her eyes tired but still bright. When she saw us, she smiled faintly. "You came." Mrs. Mwangi knelt beside her and took her hand. "We've been looking for you everywhere." Zawadi chuckled softly. "I wasn't lost, madam. I just had work to do." "But you're not well," Mr. Mwangi said. "You need rest." She shook her head slowly. "Every time I help someone, it takes a part of me. But I can't stop because if I stop, the light fades." Her words were calm but they cut deep. "Let us help you," Mrs. Mwangi said desperately. "Come home with us." Zawadi looked at her and for the first time tears welled in her eyes. "Home? I've never really had one. But maybe it's time." That night we brought her back to Nairobi. When the guards saw her step through the gate, they bowed their heads out of respect. Even the staff, who once whispered that she was a witch, now smiled shyly and offered food and tea. She was too weak to speak much, so we set up a small room for her near the garden. Every morning, Aisha brought her flowers and sat by her side, telling stories from school. Mr. and Mrs. Mwangi visited her often, and sometimes I would see the three of them laughing softly in the sunlight. It felt almost normal again. But deep down I sensed something, an unspoken farewell. One evening as the sky turned orange she called me to her room. "Sam," she said quietly, "you've always watched, always listened. There's something you deserve to know." I sat down, feeling a knot form in my throat. "What is it?" She smiled faintly. "I wasn't always homeless. My name wasn't even Zawadi." I frowned. "Then who are you?" "My real name is Nafula," she said. "I was born in Kidale. My mother was a healer. People said she had gifts like me. But when drought came they blamed her for everything, the hunger, the deaths. They burned our house. I was 10. She pushed me into the bushes and told me to run. I never saw her again." Her voice trembled. "I wandered for years from town to town. Sometimes people helped me, most times they didn't. Then one day I found a woman dying by the roadside. I held her hand and prayed like my mother taught me, and she woke up. Since then, I've been walking, healing, helping wherever I'm led." Tears blurred my vision. "You've been alone all this time?" She nodded. "But I was never lonely. When you carry light, you're never truly alone." She looked toward the garden. "But I'm tired now. The light inside me, it's growing dim. I can feel it." "Don't say that," I whispered. She smiled gently. "Sam, everything that lives must one day rest. Even the sun sets before rising again." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her words, about rest and light and endings that sound like beginnings. At dawn I walked to her room. The window was open. The curtains fluttered softly. She was lying on the bed, her hands folded over her chest, her face serene, a faint smile on her lips. She looked asleep. But she wasn't breathing. I called her name once, then again, my voice breaking. "Zawadi, please." No response. Mrs. Mwangi came running. When she saw her, she dropped to her knees and wept like a child. Mr. Mwangi stood silently at the doorway, tears streaming down his face. Aisha climbed onto the bed, placed a flower on Zawadi's chest and whispered, Thank you for fixing my heart. We buried her on the hill behind the house, beneath the jacaranda tree where she used to sit and sing. The whole neighborhood came. Even strangers, people she had healed, helped, or comforted. Some brought candles, others whispered prayers. The Mwangi family built a small stone cross above her grave. Read, Zawadi Nafula, a light that healed our darkness. Weeks passed. Life moved forward again, but it wasn't the same. One morning when I went to clean her old room, I found something tucked beneath her pillow, a small, tattered book. Inside were handwritten notes, verses and sketches of herbs and prayers. On the last page she had written, When fear divides, love mends. When darkness comes, be the light, even if it costs you everything. I closed the book, tears blurring my eyes. From that day I carried it in the glove compartment of the car. And every time I passed the intersection near Uhuru Park, I slowed down, looked out the window and whispered, Thank you, Zawadi. Because she had healed more than a child. She had healed a family. She had healed me. When the morning light broke over Nairobi's skyline, I stood quietly by the balcony of the Mutiso mansion. The city was slowly coming alive, hawkers calling out, matatas honking, and the faint hum of life rising with the dawn. Yet inside the vast house, peace settled like a warm blanket. Months had passed since Aisha healed little Wamboi. The child, once bedridden and pale, now ran freely across the compound, her laughter echoing through the hallways that had once felt haunted by sorrow. For me, every laugh felt like redemption. I still remembered that day vividly, the day everything changed. After Aisha's prayer and that moment of light, Wamboi woke up, fully conscious, alert, her small hand gripping her father's. Doctors called it a medical anomaly. The newspapers whispered about the girl with healing hands. But for us who witnessed it, we knew it was more than medicine. It was divine. Mr. Mutiso, once proud and skeptical, fell to his knees that day, tears streaming down his face. I had never seen him cry, not even when his wife died. But that day, his tears washed away years of hardness. God used her, he whispered. The same girl I called cursed, used by God. He turned to Aisha and said, Forgive me. And Aisha, always gentle, always calm, simply nodded. Sir, I was never angry, she said softly. Pain only breeds bitterness if we feed it. I will never forget those words. Now, Aisha was no longer a homeless girl. She had chosen not to live in the main house despite Mr. Mutiso's insistence. Instead, she stayed in the small cottage near the back garden, the same one that used to house the gardener. She said she preferred quietness, a place where she could pray and listen. Every morning she would walk to the slums nearby, carrying food and clothes for street children. She told them stories of faith, of forgiveness, and of a God who sees even the forgotten. The media tried to find her many times, offering money for interviews, but she always declined. The miracle wasn't mine, she'd say. It was God's. Still, her humility only made her story spread wider. Churches, hospitals, and even politicians came seeking her prayers. One afternoon, as I drove Mr. Mutiso to a business meeting, he sat quietly in the back seat, his eyes fixed on the city passing by. Daniel, he said suddenly, breaking the silence. Yes, sir? I keep thinking about how blind I was. All the money, all the power, yet I couldn't see the truth before me. A girl with nothing taught me what faith means. He chuckled bitterly. Funny, isn't it? I glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Not funny, sir. Just grace. He nodded. Grace. Yes, that's what it is. Then, after a pause, he said, Do you think people like me can really change, Daniel? I smiled faintly. I think change isn't what we do once. It's what we keep doing, sir. Every day. He leaned back, thoughtful. From that day onward, he changed indeed. He opened a foundation in Aisha's name, the Light Within Trust. It provided shelter and schooling for street children and widows. He began attending church again. He even started mentoring young entrepreneurs, something he'd never had time for before. But the most beautiful transformation was in his relationship with Wamboi. The little girl, now strong and curious, followed him everywhere, to board meetings, charity events, even to church. She'd hold his hand and whisper, Daddy, let's thank God. And he always did. One evening, the sunset spilled golden light over the garden as Aisha sat under the mango tree, humming softly. I walked over to bring her tea as I often did. Daniel, she greeted warmly, smiling. You look tired. Sit. I obeyed, lowering myself beside her. You've been quiet lately, I said. She nodded. Sometimes silence speaks clearer than words. She looked toward the sky. Do you ever wonder why God lets us suffer before blessing us? I hesitated. Often. But maybe it's so we can recognize his hand when he moves. A gentle breeze brushed her face. She looked peaceful, glowing even. I think you're right, she said. If I hadn't been broken, I wouldn't have been still enough to hear him. Then she turned to me. Daniel, promise me something. Anything. Take care of them, the little one and her father. They have a purpose beyond wealth. I can feel it. Her tone made me uneasy. Why does it sound like you're saying goodbye? She smiled. No one stays forever, Daniel. We just pass through and leave light behind. I didn't understand her then. A few weeks later, Aisha fell ill. At first, we thought it was exhaustion. She'd been visiting sick children and sleeping little. But her fever worsened quickly. Doctors couldn't explain what was wrong. I stayed by her bedside in the small cottage. She barely spoke, only whispering prayers under her breath. When Mr. Mutiso arrived, panic filled his face. He held her frail hand and said, "Please don't leave us. You healed my daughter, let me get you the best care." Aisha smiled weakly. "You can't heal what's meant to return home, sir." Tears streamed down his cheeks. "Don't talk like that." She turned her eyes toward him. "You once said you didn't believe in miracles. But I see one every time you kneel to pray with Wamboi. That's all the healing I wanted to bring." Her voice faded. "Take care of her, and remember, Grace." Those were her last words. The morning she passed, Nairobi's sky turned gray, and a light drizzle fell. The mansion felt hollow without her. Even the child was silent for days. But something beautiful happened at her funeral. Hundreds of people came, from the slums, from the hospitals, from far villages. All carrying flowers, stories, tears. They called her Mama Aisha, the girl who once had nothing but gave everything. And as they sang her favorite hymn, Bwana yu sehemu yengu, Lord, you are my portion, a ray of sunlight pierced through the clouds, shining directly on her grave. I saw it. Everyone did. We all knew she was finally home. Years later, the Mutiso mansion still stands, but it's no longer cold marble and silence. It's filled with laughter, music, and warmth. The foundation she inspired has grown, now helping thousands. Wamboi is a young woman now, studying medicine. She says she wants to heal people, like Aisha did. And as for me, I'm still the driver, still the observer. But my heart has changed. Sometimes when I drive past the slums at dusk, I see little girls huddled together, singing hymns. And I think, maybe one of them carries the same light Aisha did. Because miracles don't always wear crowns or live in mansions. Sometimes they wear torn clothes and sleep under bridges, until the world finally sees the light within them. I parked the car one evening watching the city lights flicker. "Daniel," Wamboi said from the back seat, smiling, "do you think Aisha can see us?" I looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror, her eyes so full of life. "Yes, child," I said softly. "And I think she's smiling." She grinned. "Then I'll make her proud." I nodded. "You already have." As I drove off into the Nairobi night, the city lights shimmered like tiny stars, reminders that no matter how dark the night, light always finds a way through. And in that quiet I whispered, "Thank you, Aisha, for healing more than a child. You healed us all."